Okay, welcome to our regular Board of Commissioners meeting for the town of Matthews for October 12, 2020. May have noticed we're once again doing this meeting remotely as we get all our technology set up where we can meet in person once again, hopefully for our next meeting in October, but if not, then soon. I'd like to remind everyone new to Mecklenburg County's COVID-19 Phase 3 order. This meeting of the Matthews Board of Commissioners will be conducted remotely using the Zoom virtual meeting platform. The town of Matthews is committed to transparency and robust public participation during these challenging times. Remind everyone as well that the mayor and commissioners will vote on each item by roll call vote, meaning each member will be polled to individually state their vote for the record. They will also raise their hand to visually indicate their vote. I'm going to start by recognizing some of our participants in tonight's meeting. First of all, we have our town attorney, Mr. Charles Buckley. Hello, Mr. Buckley. Commissioner Dave End.
Hello.
Commissioner Larry Whitley. Town Clerk Lori Canapino. Mayor Pro Tem Renee Garner. Commissioner Ken McCool. Guys are slow on the recognition tonight. Commissioner John Urban. Assistant Town Manager Becky Hawk. Planning Director Jay Camp. Commissioner Jeff Miller. Communications Coordinator Maureen Keith. Town Manager Hazen Blodgett. And there's others on, I can't see you, but that's what we'll leave that off for the introductions. We're going to start this evening with agenda item number 2. Our invocation will be delivered tonight by Commissioner John Urban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. So please bow your heads if you'd like to join me. Father, give our leaders wisdom. Forgive our nation from its sins and grant your people courage and wisdom as we stand for your principles. Father, thank you for your wisdom you provided our founding fathers. May those who lead us now preserve the basic rights set forth in the Constitution. Give leaders today wisdom so theirs too will be a legacy of freedom. Father, I pray you would be a shield around our police, firefighters, EMS, and public works, and every other man and woman who protect and serve us. Please protect them as they risk their lives for others. Amen.
Thank you, Commissioner Urban. We'll now do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Move on to agenda item number 4. We're going to recognize Community Planning Month. I'd like to do this by issuing a proclamation in recognition of Community Planning Month to Planning Director Jay Camp and his staff. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, and rural areas, and whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work, play, and live, and whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community, and whereas the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation, and whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America and its territories, and whereas this year's theme, Planning is Essential to Recovery, highlights how planning and planners can lead communities to equitable, resilient, and long-lasting recovery from the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of planning boards and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the town of Matthews, North Carolina. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by professional community planners of the town of Matthews and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the month of October 2020 is hereby designated as Community Planning Month in the town of Matthews, North Carolina, in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month. In witness whereof I hereunto set my hand and cause the seal of the town of Matthews to be affixed this 12th day of October 2020. So, thank you. Jay, would you like to say a few words?
Well, Mayor, first, thanks for reading yet another proclamation. I know it seems like we have one once a month, but would just like to take an opportunity to say thank you for recognizing our profession before the public this evening. Matthews obviously is a very, very special place. I found almost 15 years ago as a planner and hope to be here for many more years. And also want to recognize Rob Will, who's on the call tonight. He has a lot of items on the agenda, so be patient with him. I think we've got close to half a dozen planning items to talk about this evening. So once again, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Camp. I've mentioned several times, especially after I got involved as an elected official, when I travel across the country and you go to communities that aren't well planned or aren't as well planned as Matthews, you really appreciate all the great efforts that have gone in place here in Matthews, not only in the last few years, but for the last several decades. So you can tell that our community has been well planned, and we're very appreciative of that. All right, let's move on to agenda item number 5, receive an update on COVID-19 from our Emergency Operations Center Commander, Rob Kinnenberg. And I'm sorry, sir, I didn't recognize you at the beginning, but welcome, and please give us an update.
Good evening, council and members of Mayor and members of council. Today is day 216 of our efforts to manage the county's response to COVID. As of this morning, there were 30,234 cases, 368 deaths. Over the last 2 weeks, the governor did move us into phase 3 on September 30th, but continued the typical occupancy and attendance restrictions found in 2.5 for indoor and outdoor activities. Again, 25 indoor and 50 outdoor in a single space. Phase 3 will extend through October 23rd. Total cumulative case count here in Mecklenburg County has increased 5% in 14 days, reflecting a slightly lower rate of increase in total cases as compared with the last time I reported to you. The daily new 7-day average does show a slight increase. If you'll remember in previous conversations, it's important that you use consistent timeframes for your data. So we can see there where our typical 2 weeks shows a decrease, but a 7-day shows an increase. Deaths have increased by 3.3% over the last 2 weeks, and with an average of 100 new cases being reported daily and a positivity rate of 5.18%, which is right where we had been. Again, the 7-day positivity rate is up slightly higher than that, about 6%. We continue to see a decline in the average number of COVID patients hospitalized, but there are fewer critical care beds available on average due to the typical non-COVID medical causes. Social distancing index continues to improve slightly since the governor's mask order back at the end of June. Currently, we're right about 40 in that index. As we stated earlier, pre-COVID first responder protocols have caused our call volumes to go back up to where they were before COVID. And I say this each week because we experience it. A single member on a police patrol squad or a single fire department shift being exposed can set us out of balance very quickly. Luckily, Novant and the health department has been very responsive to our needs for testing. Matthews Learning Pod for local residents students at Cruise Road continues to serve about 16 students. This weekend, local restaurants took advantage of the opportunity to expand outdoor seating into public space. This is a viable option to allow small facilities to increase their business. However, adherence to Executive Orders 160 and 169 must be maintained by the owner. The town is not coordinating these events. We are simply providing the space. The big questions or issues going forward, as all of you are aware, early voting begins on October 15th at 33 sites across the county, including Butler High School and Matthews Elementary. The Board of Election is being assisted by the EOC staff and the logistics function of the EOC to provide PPE for all their poll workers, and they feel they are ready. Halloween is at the end of the month. The county has provided guidance on Halloween events, but of more concern are the private parties, costume parties, and adult activities that will be extremely difficult to monitor. So I'll entertain any questions. That's the end of my report.
Chief, what do you attribute the slight uptick to? I know it's a national phenomenon, but why are we having more cases?
I think there's consensus that when we move to phase 3, the public felt that the restrictions were lifted. When the governor established phase 1, he talked about a 3-phase plan. So there was a big assumption that when we got to phase 3, we could increase our indoor and outdoor occupancy limits. We could go back to festivals. In the paper, you've probably read stories about Oktoberfest at Mecklenburg Brewery that led to an outbreak. So I think people are ready to get out. The expanded seating helped remedy some of that. But I think people are just becoming a little more lax than they were during phase 2 or 2.5.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Miller, do you have a question, sir?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Rob. My question is about the mask index or indices. How do you monitor, measure the mask wearing and your reporting on that?
Those are numbers that come directly out of the daily report from the EOC. The state Department of Health has a group out of Pennsylvania that measures that social distancing and applies it to an indices. That's the best I can tell you, Mr. Miller. I just take the number right off the report.
Thank you.
And Rob, tonight you said our indice was in the 40s, I believe. Does that mean 40% people are wearing masks, or what does that mean?
It's not a direct percentage correlation. Our best performance on the social distancing index was a 60, and that was in April, right after the first stay-at-home order went into place. So you had a high degree of social distancing and isolation at that point. Okay. When phase 2 went in, where we referred to it as safer at home, that index dropped a little bit to 50. By the beginning of summer vacations in early June, we were at 30. So now we've crept back up to 40 and stayed right about there.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for Chief Kinnenberg? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Appreciate your update. Move on to agenda item number 6. Are there any items to be added to the agenda, Mr. Manager?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor.
And agenda item number 7, Lori, do we have anybody sign up for public comment?
We do not.
Okay. We'll move on to agenda item 8, recess regular meeting for public hearings on an application to amend the Unified Development Ordinance and land use map of the town of Matthews. I will entertain a motion to do that.
So moved.
Second.
Motion from Commissioner Whitley, a second from Commissioner Miller. Take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Commissioner McCool,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. So we now stand recessed. I'd like to ask recess from our regular meeting. Jay, can you please introduce our planning board members who are also very much deserving of our proclamation tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have Jim Johnson, Tom Dorsey, Jonathan Clayton, Mike Foster, and I believe we also have Jana Reeve and Carrie Lamson. I'm not seeing them in the room right now. From our department, we have Rob Will and planner Darren Hallman.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to number 8A, zoning application 2020-716, text amendment to change the text of the Unified Development Ordinance, creating new section 155.506.16A to allow independent living facilities as a permitted use in the RI zoning district associated with a conditional plan and under prescribed conditions that ensure such facilities have limited applicability and are distinguished from multifamily residential uses. That's a mouthful. Mr. Will.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. This is a zoning text amendment to the UDO. The applicant is FC Matthews LLC, and they have submitted a request to add independent living facilities as permitted with prescribed conditions in the RI zoning district. Currently, we have a definition of independent living in the UDO, and it states that independent living shall mean dwelling units designed for use by older persons who are mentally and physically capable of taking care of themselves on a regular basis, are under single management or cooperative, and then may be located within a continuing care retirement community, CCRC. A restriction of residency by age must meet the provisions of the Fair Housing Act. These units are grouped together and provided with some level of common maintenance, recreational facilities, and security. A variety of additional amenities geared for older persons may also be made available to the residents. So that's the pretty it's a substantial definition that we already have in the UDO. However, there is no provision for independent living facilities in the table of permitted uses. And so the applicant has requested that we add independent living facilities with certain prescribed conditions to be located in the RI district when associated with a conditional site plan to be approved by the Town Board of Commissioners. They have requested that all applicable standards in the section 155.506.16 for CCRCs shall also apply to independent living facilities. That includes having a minimum of 5-acre lot and a maximum of 20 independent living units per gross acre. They also have included independent living facilities shall be required to include a minimum of 5 of the following amenities. There's 13 listed amenities here, including controlled access to buildings, property management services, community room, fitness facilities, business center, meal service, emergency pull cords in living spaces, local transportation, interior elevators, salon on site, conditioned corridors, interior trash chutes, and/or an indoor community mail room and package center. In addition, the applicant has requested an amendment of the UDO for the table of required parking spaces to add 1.1 spaces per each independent living unit plus 1 space for each 2 employees and the shift of graced employment. Those are the same requirements as CCRCs. We could also, alternatively, we could add independent living facilities could be added to the existing table with the continuing care retirement communities because the requirements would be the same. The proposed text amendment would only impact the RI district by adding the use independent living facilities as permitted with prescribed conditions. And I will be happy to answer any questions. We also have a presentation from the applicant, but I'll be happy to answer any questions from the board.
Rob, I have a question. Do you foresee any unintended consequences if we make this change across the board?
No, I do not. I've looked at this, and we have a very strong definition in the UDO already of independent living facilities. This actually gives us a new option for different types of housing in Matthews. This is a new type of product.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Will from the board? Commissioner Urban?
Yeah, Rob, is staff looked at these amenity items, the minimum 5 of the 13? It seems that that's only about 38% of the boxes need to be checked for those amenities. Moving forward, I'd like to see a much higher percentage of that. That's my first question. And then the second one is the 1.1 parking spaces. Is this predicated on whether or not it's a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or 3-bedroom unit?
Good questions. I'll take the first one first. The amenities, those were what was provided to us by the applicant, and it probably would be nice to see some more options or increase in the instead of just 5. So the parking is the same as CCRCs, so it is not dependent on number of bedrooms.
Well, okay, I realize that, but it says it per living unit, and a CCRC is typically a much larger facility because obviously this text amendment is foreshadowing a rezoning case for an independent living scenario. So it's a little bit different than a CCRC. So I guess my question would be is sort of in reviewing this, there's twofold. One is you could have a more rural site, a little bit more remote, that may facilitate more car parking. You may have an infill site in the downtown environment, which this parking space allotment would probably be satisfactory. So I guess I'm wondering if that needs to be, if you're going there, does it need to be tweaked a little bit more from that aspect of it? So, these are probably 55 plus age group. And I don't know too many 55-year-olds that have given up their cars yet. And so if you had a 2 or 3 bedroom unit, you're probably talking 2 vehicles potentially. So, and if they're in town, they probably don't need the cars. But if they're more located to where this potential rezoning case is, right, vehicles may be necessary.
Okay, I understand.
Are any other questions from the board? Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I guess I think if we're going to start discussing the parking spaces, does the bus run along Idlewild and Margaret Wallace? Is it in close proximity? And is that something as a board we would discuss if a project is along a transit line? Would we require more parking spaces?
I'm not sure if the bus runs along Idlewild or Margaret Wallace. If there's a transit line up there, that's a very good point. And I think when we discuss the next case, which Commissioner Urban was right, it's foreshadowing of a rezoning. The density is something that we can talk about, and that kind of plays in with the transit line.
I believe there was maybe an express route, Mayor Pro Tem. There was an Idlewild Express. I think CAT ceased operation of that, if I'm not mistaken, but we can double check.
I mean, I think looking into the future, we, as a town, we probably could encourage transit use, and by discussing that with these developments. So, instead of increasing the parking spaces, if there's access to transit, then we need to be aware of that.
Other questions or comments for Mr. Will? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to the applicants. Want to make a presentation?
Yes, thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, this is Colin Brown with the Alexander Ricks firm. My associate Brittany Lenz and I have been working with Cypress Senior Living in a number of jurisdictions to introduce their new product. Rob, thank you for that overview. And as John has correctly identified, we are going to the next item. We will be showing you a rezoning petition where we can get in the details. We can show you the site plan. But the reason we're here on this item is I think this is a really innovative concept. It's really being embraced in a lot of jurisdictions we're working in. But the Matthews ordinance, there just wasn't quite a spot for it. So we've engaged with staff over the last several months. We kicked this off pre-COVID, spoke with you some pre-COVID. That seems like a world ago. But finally, we are happy to be here to propose. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Lindsay with Cypress to tell you about the text amendment. So at this point, we're just talking big picture. And as we move into the rezoning, we'll be happy to show you our site plan, talk through some real details. But the point of this presentation is to show you what we think is the need for the text amendment so that your ordinance in the town of Matthews can accommodate developments like this one. Jim? Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, Colin. Yeah, and as Rob mentioned, this is a new product. It's a new form of senior living. As Colin mentioned, my name is Jim Lindsay. I'm with Cypress Senior Living, and we're the petitioner for the text amendment.
Jay, as we're moving in, are we able to move the slides, or will you advance those for us? I'm sorry, Jim.
I was waiting for a pause. I'm happy to advance them unless you would like me to hand over mouse control. It's up to you.
I think it'd be.
Well, yeah, sure, that's fine.
If you're able, if you can give us control, I'll be happy to advance them. Then Jim can maybe move a little bit more smoothly.
Let's see.
And if we can't figure it out, Jay will you can advance, and Jim will give you a nod.
Okay, you should be able to arrow forward now.
Okay, let's see.
Well,
There we go.
Sorry, I just don't know that I have control of the screen. I don't share my screen, though, do I? Tell you what, Jay, let's, if you don't mind, if you'll flip to the first slide, and then Jim will say next slide as we move through.
Yeah, well, this is, you can flip the next slide. There was, yeah, and actually one more slide. This is a good spot. I mean, so big picture before we drill into details, who we are. We're Cypress Senior Living. We're here to talk about the text amendment and really talk about as Rob mentioned, we're bringing a new form of senior living to basically expand the definition of senior living and therefore expand access to senior living beyond just the traditional form that it currently that the industry is currently presenting to people. And right now, if you were to look for a senior living option in Matthews, you would have to spend about $3,000 per month on average. And the reason the cost is so high is you're paying for all the services, regardless if you use them or not. And for some folks, that works out. And we actually historically have been developing and investing in this sort of traditional model of independent living. And for some folks it works, but for a lot of seniors, frankly, $3,000 is just a lot of money to spend, especially if you're not using all the services. So we had folks coming in the door saying, look, we want to be in the building. We want to have the benefits of senior living, of purpose-built senior living, which means accessibility, which means safety, and probably more than anything else, just the community that a senior living a building brings to someone's life, of living in amongst your peer group, and as you age and make new friends and but also stay in your community near your friends and family. So essentially, the people that were coming into our building were saying, look, we want all these services, or we want all this if we need them, but otherwise we don't want to pay for them. So what Cypress is doing is unbundling those services and providing at a base rate the benefits of senior living, of purpose-built senior living. But if you want the extra services, then those will be charged on an a la carte basis. And what it does is it opens up the door beyond just the traditional model, which is $3,000 a month, and we're going to be about half of that. And we think that this is where the industry is moving. But in order to do that, there needs to be an update to, in particular for Matthews, the zoning ordinance, which is like why we're here today. So if you go, you already went to the next slide. Okay, it's perfect. So it's basically very similar to CCRC, but it needs a little bit of a tweak to be able to move beyond that higher cost and almost luxury version of senior living and bring it to a more affordable and attainable price point for the average senior. And so that's basically who we are as a Cypress Senior Living. In terms of the text amendment, I guess, was there anything else we wanted to go on the text amendment?
Yeah. And Jim, thanks for that overview. Again, I'll say, I had some experience with your CCRC in my prior firm. My mentor, Bailey Patrick, was engaged to work with Erickson at the time and teed up your ordinance framework for CCRCs. And I think that's worked well. You all know what you have in the community, but we're certainly seeing, I'm seeing in the market, a need for a little something else. And I think what Cypress is offering really meets that. So Jay, if we go one or two more slides, we were trying to find the right place for it. When we had a conversation with some of you commissioners, and you all said, this seems like a good idea, work with our staff. So we approached staff, sat down with them, talked through it. We thought the most appropriate zoning district that you have in place is your RI zoning district. And then what we did is we looked at several other ordinance from towns in Mecklenburg County and beyond to come up with some things. I think what, as Mayor, you asked, are there unintended consequences? I think that's what your staff is always concerned with is opening Pandora's box. So early on, Jay and Rob's caution was, hey, we don't want to create a monster here. So let's put in some things that we can know we're not going to get these on every lot. And so we indicated here it must be associated with a conditional plan. So it's not a wide open by right use, a minimum 5 acres. So they're not plopping up on any unfilled lot. We'll put a maximum density cap on there. And then we talked about amenities. So what we're really seeing, that I'm seeing in the market, is we have some very nice CCRC communities. We have what I would call nursing home communities. And then I'm seeing this product come in, and it is not a multifamily home. We sometimes kind of get lumped in with apartment. It's certainly not that. So that's where this list of amenities comes up. And of course, if we could, and to Mr. Urban's point, I think we check a lot more than 5. We're not crafting this just for us. So we're open to your input on how much flexibility you want in the ordinance generally. So certainly open to that, and open to other items on the menu that you'd like to see or not like to see. So that's kind of how we came to that. Jay, next slide, if you will. That's kind of locking in on the acreage minimum, the density maximum, the list of design amenities. And then next up, that's where I was really saying we feel like we need this, because otherwise, without this definition, if we're not a CCRC, then the only avenue in Matthews to go for is multifamily. And this is certainly not that product. As you compare this to typical multifamily, the senior independent living facilities generate significantly fewer residents per building. Someone was asking about the parking ratio, Mr. Urban. I'm not sure if that was you, but the average independent living unit has 1.1 resident, where multifamily, we see more than that. So we thought that was an appropriate parking ratio. Once we get to our zoning portion of this, I'll let Jim talk to you about the mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units, but these are not large units as you would see in some multifamily communities. There is a lot less traffic. That's something we talk about on every development we do in Matthews and the surroundings. 40% less AM trips and 50% less PM trips than a typical non-age restricted multifamily community. And something we talk about an awful lot also in Matthews is school impact. So there is 0 school impact with these developments. The positives, the senior independent living facilities pay similar tax assessments to multifamily. So you get the tax basis pop, but they don't tax the infrastructure because you don't have the vehicle trips and you don't have the students in schools. One thing I will say, because we'll talk about density, and I know you talk about density a lot and you see some high numbers, say, well, we want to keep away from that. So I do want to again, make clear that this is not multifamily. So when we get to our rezoning in a bit, you'll hear a density number that may be higher than what you're used to seeing. But we'd like to remind you that the concerns that are usually associated with density, so the traffic generation, the school generation, are just not present here. So we actually think with the low number of people in the units, we'd actually have fewer residents than typical. So that is the big picture framework that we're talking about. As far as the applicability, I hope I've addressed, we've tried to tailor this ordinance so we're not wide open on things. I think Matthews has looked through and how many RI zoning districts are there over 5 acres. There's about 33 properties, and this is some research that Rob and Jay have done. So I don't think it's opening them. A lot of those are campuses, churches, but I do want to point out that we've shown in our draft text amendment that to do one of these would require conditional plan approval. So no one can do them by right. If we set this framework, folks would still have to come through with the site-specific zoning case as we're going to do, and you would have the ability to approve or deny that after a public hearing and public input. The goal with this presentation that we're talking about now is just a text amendment to provide the framework for this type of senior independent living facility. Happy to answer any questions. And again, I know you're going to have questions about details of the product and the site plan, and those are coming in the next presentation where we'll be able to do a real show and tell. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Brown or Mr. Lindsay from the board, town board? Commissioner Urban.
Colin, nice to see you again. I would say my 2 comments was on the amenity side, knowing this is a text amendment across the board, and I reviewed your product and you probably hit 12 or 13 out of 13. I would like to see this text amendment in working with staff to get that of 8 or more. 8 amenities out of 13 is at least 60%. There's a lot of things on that list that are almost driven by code to some degree. So they're already checking that box. So I think we need to tighten up the number of amenities per the 13. And then I would like it, and parking is the bane of any project. And I have no problem not having parking when there's other cross easements for parking and there's transportation and Uber and things like that. But I want to make sure, and maybe it doesn't happen for this text amendment, but maybe Jay has to come back with staff, is that, again, if we're in town in an RI condition, there may not be a need for as much parking as if you were in a more remote location. So I get the 1.1 dwelling units, but if you allow a roommate situation, a 2-bedroom, and 2 folks can occupy that 2-bedroom, the possibility of 2 cars does exist. So I'd like that sort of, it may not happen again, like I said, for this text amendment, but I'd like to sort of look through that aspect of it. Maybe it drops in certain areas, and maybe the parking count goes up in other areas. But I just don't want to use a blanket case, because I don't want to force an individual doing something infill in the town of Matthews stuck at 1.1, where they might only need to use 0.75, and the reverse holds true if someone's out at the location we're going to be talking at next.
Yeah. Well, I think, the question we're talking about is where do we set the text amendment? Certainly, if you come in for conditional zoning, you can require more than that. The site we're going to show you, we do think there are transit options. There's some walkability. We think 1.1's appropriate, but with the framework we're setting, I think you set the minimum, and then you can certainly require more through the rezoning. But it's a good thing to talk about.
Commissioner Urban, I just wanted to add that is the same standard for our CCRCs in town. I don't know if that was mentioned a second ago, but it is consistent with Plantation Estates and Windsor Run, et cetera.
Well, but like I said before, is that the CCRC has assisted living care, dementia care, other forms where those occupants will not be driving a vehicle. This is purely independent living, where it's conceivable that every single occupant is using a mode of transportation or the other. So that's my only reason that this is a little bit different than CCRC. So I just want to raise that up, because it doesn't have the economy of scale that Plantation Estates has. It's understandable at the 1.1, but the developer of the project knows what he needs. They're coming in at 1.1. That's fine. And as long as these are rezoning conditionals that we can look at, we can address it. But I just want to raise that up, because there's always an unintended consequence dealing with parking issues, and I just want to lift that up.
Thank you. We'll look into that.
Commissioner McCool.
Just for comparison's sake, what's the parking requirement for multifamily? Just so I can put that in my notes.
I can screen. I was just pulling it up. I'll screen share if that's helpful to you.
Yes, please.
So bear with me here. So it's based on unit size. If this was a traditional multifamily, we would use, probably somewhere between 1.5 and 2.25. You're going to have a blend in there somewhere based on the unit count. And this is just for traditional multifamily.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for either Mr. Will or the applicants from our planning board? Going to go back to Commissioner Miller. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. What you alluded to, Mayor, earlier, unintended consequences, makes me question how many other RI sites are in town. What are their locations? I like the idea of restricting it to 5 acres and some of the other metrics that are affiliated with it before we do the text amendment, but it hasn't been identified for us. I would ask that it be identified the next time it comes before us, so that we can make a good judgment.
That's a great point, and we can have a map for you at the next time this comes before you.
Great, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
I'm sorry, one of those slides, I couldn't see all of the details on it because of the way my Zoom was set up. Could you go back? There's one that does cover parking and transit use, I think. Could we see that in the smaller?
Let's see.
We're really testing our Zoom skills tonight.
I apologize. I'm getting a slow internet.
Dear Pro Tem, I'm not sure we had one that it was in our presentation. I'm not sure we did. We have a copy of the zoning map. I have one that broke out the amenities
I think it was like, maybe slide 5 or 6, maybe further down.
Slide 6 had a good bit of information on it.
That's what, I'm sorry. I didn't have my Zoom set up so that I could read everything. And so I just want to.
This was the list of amenities. So, what we're saying is, anyone can't just come in and say you're senior living. You've got to have certain things. So this is the list of amenities. And currently as drafted, we say you have to have, 5 of the 13. Mr. Urban has indicated he'd like to see more of these. And so with the development we're going to show you, we check most of these boxes. And so I think we'd be happy to bring that up.
And if you check all of the boxes, how much would that raise your monthly rent?
That's a good question, Alex.
Well, I think we already checked quite a few of these boxes, so I don't think we would need to really change the rent, change our program. By checking most of these boxes, that's already built into the plan. So I don't see that changing our plan.
Okay, thank you.
The planning board, one more pass. Do you have any questions or comments for either Mr. Will or the applicants? Planning board.
I don't have any on the text amendment.
Okay, seeing none. Great. Thank you, Mike. So, Lori, have we received any public hearing comments?
We did not, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'd just like to make the public aware that they also have 24 hours to submit comments either by email or to matthews@matthewsnc.gov or by phone at 704-708-1222. 704-708-1222. All right. I think that wraps up agenda item 8A. So we'll move on to item B, zoning application 2020-717, Idlewild Senior Living, to change the zoning classification from R15 to RICD on that certain property designated as 9832 Idlewild Road and further designated as tax parcel 193-051-18 to accommodate a senior living facility in the RI zoning district. Mr. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, this is part 2. This is a application for a change in zoning from R15, which is the existing zoning, to RICD, conditional district. If I could go to the next slide, Jay. Thank you. This is the location. It's right next to the Lidl site and on Idlewild Road. The applicant proposes to change the existing zoning of the property from R15 to RICD for the purpose of constructing an independent senior living facility consisting of 128 units. Next slide, please. Here's a aerial view of the site. It's starred and outlined in green. The other parcel that's outlined in green is Matthews, is owned by Matthews, and it's a park site. So but as you can see, this is right next to Lidl. Across the street are some small, there's a single family and also a single family residence. Also, some low density multifamily units, and it is very close to the intersection of Margaret Wallace and Idlewild. Next slide, please. And this is just a street view. The majority of the site is wooded. There is a single family residence there, and actually in this you can see across the street the low density multifamily units that's in Mint Hill across the street. Next slide, please. Okay. The site's currently wooded, as I mentioned. It's It's a total of 7 acres, but there will be some future right-of-way dedication, so the site will be reduced to 6.16 acres. It's directly to the north is the new Lidl. South is a small church. Behind the site west is a vacant tract, and across Idlewild Road is low-density multifamily complex and a single-family residential. Next slide, please. We'll talk about the site plan a little bit. All right, this is the proposed site plan. It consists of one building, 128 units, a leasing office, amenities that we talked about in the previous text amendment, 144 parking spaces, some of which are covered. It comes in about 18, just a little over 18 units per acre is the density. Tree save area is 0.93 acres. And there's a driveway and pedestrian connection next to the next door Lidl, and also a 10-foot multi-use path along Idlewild. The building height is proposed to be 57 feet. Next slide, please. And this is, I won't read these off because we already talked about these. These are the proposed amenities, and 5 of the following, or a number to be determined. Let's talk a little bit about density of other multifamily developments we have here in Matthews. So the average density of regular, then not age restricted, multifamily developments is 12.7 units, 12.75 units per acre. We do have some high density right next to Town Hall with the new apartments that went in there. This proposed density is a little bit over 18 units per acre. I did not include units under construction in this graph. These are existing, somewhat older. Some of them are somewhat older, multifamily dwelling units, multifamily in the town. Then there's also Willow Grove, this is in Mint Hill. It's almost directly across the street from the proposed development, and it comes in about 16 units per acre. Next slide, please. This is just a summary of the transportation memorandum. There will be one full movement unsignalized access located at Idlewild Road, and a second access, an unsignalized connection to the existing stub located within the adjacent Lidl shop grocery store. They're proposing about 128 units would weekday generate about 490 trips, and the anticipated approximately peak hour trips is 26, and PM 34 peak hour trips. Next slide, please. Oh, this is tiny. I'm going to have to increase my font size. Sorry, guys. So the land at Idlewild and Margaret Wallace is surrounded by commercial and uses and adjacent jurisdictions. The comprehensive or the comp plan recommends redevelopment to higher density residential uses as appropriate, including institutional infill development. Town acknowledges a trend towards housing developments marketed towards seniors. In Mint Hill, a retirement community was recently developed on Idlewild Road. That's Willow Grove. And so the town encourages such communities as development opportunities along and adjacent to this corridor. So the proposed rezoning is consistent with the land use plan. Next slide, please. The density of the project is somewhat of a concern because it is higher than our average density of other established multifamily developments in town. However, this will be a different type of development and not just so I think there can be some consideration taken there, but we wanted to bring it to the attention of the board that it is a little bit higher than our average density around town. We haven't seen any elevations of the proposed 57-foot high building fronting close to Idlewild, which would be a dramatic change in the character of the corridor. But staff, police, fire, public works, parks and rec, public works improvements will be determined by the TIA and NCDOT. But otherwise, we had no other concerns with the submitted proposal. And that concludes my presentation on the rezoning request. Happy to take questions.
Commissioner McCool.
So I have a few concerns. First being, I think that the 57-foot, that is a very, very, very dramatic change to that area, and that causes me some concern. Second, I think this kind of boxes us in a little bit. You know, as we all know, younger people are moving to Matthews and the surrounding areas in droves right now because of the way our county is growing. So it kind of puts us in this weird box where, you know, only 55 and older can live here, where there could be other units for younger people. So that's just another thought. And then the density is another thought that I have is, you know, that's a dramatic increase in density for this area. And I mean, I've driven here before, and I traffic kind of concerns me a little bit. So I'd like to see how those are addressed.
Mr. Brown, do you also have a presentation on this portion of the rezoning?
Yes, sir, we do.
You want to go ahead and give that, and then perhaps we'll roll all the questions up into one, either you or Mr. Will.
Jay,
Jay, you may have to drive again.
Yeah, bear with me. I'm pulling it up now.
Okay. Well, as we get into that, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, again, thank you for your time. On our team, you just met Jim Lindsay. He is still with us and will be happy to answer questions. Also, I think on the Zoom line, we have Nick Bouchon with DRG, who has done the site design and engineering on it, and also Michael Wickline with DRG, who has done our traffic analysis. So Jay, if we can spin through, that was our introduction slide. We can go straight to next property location. Rob's done a good job with the overview, and y'all know this well, but this is very much the edge of Matthews. So this is kind of the limit. If you see this map here, we're at, there's Margaret Wallace and Idlewild. The Matthews limits are shown in purple. So if you cross Idlewild, you're in Mint Hill. If you cross Margaret Wallace, you are in Charlotte. So this is kind of at the point of three jurisdictions at the edge of Matthews. Next slide. That's just a little bit tighter view so you can see our parcel there. Next, I think, will be an aerial. And Rob did a nice job with the overview, but I did want to show, we do think this is a fantastic location for this type of use. I know I'm not controlling the cursor right now, but I want to show, as Rob mentioned, we are directly adjacent to the new Lidl. We will have a vehicular driveway connection as well as a sidewalk connection. So folks can literally walk right out their door, never have to get on a public street, and they can be at the Lidl. Just north of the site on the other side of Margaret Wallace there, you have the Mentworth Common Shopping Center. So you've got a Harris Teeter Center, other retail amenities there, got some restaurants. Just south of the site, we have institutional uses. There's a church just south of the site. And then behind the site, of course, is is the Idlewild Road Park. So there's a lot going on in the area. This is a nice location where if we have folks that don't want to drive, or they may have a car but may want to park in one of the covered spaces and walk, there's a lot that they can get into without having to get out on the street. So we're excited about the site. We think it's a really nice fit. Mayor Pro Tem Gardner pointed out to me when I had a call with her earlier this year, in fact, there is some senior living across the street in the town of Mint Hill, and we think it fits in nicely with that. So next slide, if you please. There it is, right at 7 acres. We will be doing some right-of-way dedications, as Rob mentioned. Next is the existing zoning, which we don't need to spend time on that. We can go straight to the area plan. So as a land use attorney that sits down a lot with clients, I very rarely open up an area plan and find exactly what we're looking for. But late last year, when the Legacy team came to Charlotte, said, hey, we're looking through the Charlotte Metro. We want to find some places that are right for us. So let's look at land use plans. Let's see what's appropriate. Town of Matthews was very high on their radar. So we actually sat down before the site was located and looked at what was in your plan. And this, rarely do I get to have great news like this when I use land use plans, but I did want to show you this. So here's your land use plan. You'll see here, this is the Idlewild Road area, which kind of snakes along Idlewild there. The star is where our site is. Jay, if you'll move to the next slide. So as I read this, we're looking for support, and we did see recommendations here, including redevelopment to higher density residential uses is appropriate, and institutional infill development is encouraged. And then more, we're talking about senior living for them. So you've said higher density residential appropriate, institutional is appropriate, and then went on so specifically to say the town acknowledges a trend toward housing developments marketed toward seniors. In Mint Hill, the retirement community was recently approved. This development will impact the market in Matthews. In response, the town encourages such communities as development opportunities along and adjacent to this corridor. So again, rarely do you kind of see chapter and verse in a land use plan, but this certainly seemed to have very strong and specific plan support. So that encourages us to engage with this property, engage with the town of Matthews, have the conversation, and let's try to find, as you're seeing, crafted the zoning district that works. So really taking the lead from your land use plan here. Next up, next slide. Jay, I think I've just got some zoom ins, but encourage you to take a look at this. It was a well thought out plan, recommended both the increase in density in this area and specifically this type of housing. And now we'll get into our site plan. Again, and trying to talk about a couple items that you mentioned, Mr. McCool. The site, I'll show you, well, I'll address height when we get to the plan, but we are talking about 128 units. And that is, frankly, the kind of model plan that works for this development. If this were on a 10-acre site, we would still have about 128 units. So there's a prototype that works for this type of development. The way you kind of want a site where everyone's together, not spread out. So that's the reason that we're after the 128 units. Next up, I do want to say this is not, multifamily. So I know that staff has shown you, next slide, Jay, if you will. Staff has shown you comparisons to density and multifamily housing. I hope we've done a lot to show you how we're very different. Number one, if you'll follow here, there are significantly less residents per building. So the national average, the average independent living unit nationwide, we can show you these numbers, has 1.1 residents, where your typical apartment has 1.9. So it's fewer units. So it's fewer people in the units. And so a density comparison between traditional multifamily and seniors tough. And Jim was just doing some math and he said, I think Rob mentioned your typical density of 12.75 at 1.9 residents per unit would be 24 residents per acre. So that's if we do the math, if you say your average density is 12, and we know that there are easily two people in those, so that's what that comes out to. If you apply that on ours, we are seeking more density. So we're at 18 units per acre, but we know that ours will have fewer residents. So at 1.1 per unit, That's 19.8 residents per acre. So even though we have a higher density, the expectation is that we would have significantly fewer residents in our units. And that's really borne out when you look at the traffic analysis that Rob showed. Michael can answer those. We just get very few trips, to be honest with you, and then no school impact. So I remind you, as you consider density, please consider this is not an apples to apples comparison. This is nothing like an apartment project. Next slide, please. This is just to put a little bit more meat on the bone. We've got here, this is just a colored up site plan. So you can see how this development would lay out on the site. I know Mr. McCool mentioned height is a concern. For this type of development, we do frankly want to go to that level. So we're not low and spread out. This kind of keeps folks concentrated, built on the elevator concept. What I do hope you notice is we've got, I think, a nice setback on the front side. And you'll see if you look at the plan, we actually have tree save between the building and the street. So I think that'll do something to screen that building so you don't feel that big imposing building. We've got nice tree save there. You don't drive by and see a parking field in a big tall building. I think this was laid out really nicely when you look at it. So you enter the site, parking is to the rear and screen. You've got some covered. We have a multi-use path along the frontage of the site and a nice tree safe screening the building. And there you can see the connection to the Lidl as well. So you've got a connection there to their sidewalk network. So I do think a lot of folks will use that. And I can't think of a better amenity to an independent living facility than an affordable grocer next door. And if they want a less affordable grocer, you can still walk to the Harris Teeter nearby. Next. Site plan is just a zoom in on the site plan. So you've seen how that works, but now you can see that a little bit better. So I think Nick and the DRG team have done a good job to, again, have that tree save out front, really make it meaningful. So you see it, site doesn't look clear cut, screens the size of that building a good bit. We have commercial uses to the north, or commercial use to the north, institutional use to the south. We've got no single family. I will let y'all know, we kicked this process off early last year. We did a mailer to surrounding properties before we filed. You know, we didn't want to file this if we were going to run into a hornet's nest of opposition. We had no takers at our original offer for a meeting. Now that we're in the rezoning process, we hosted our official community meeting a month or so ago. We had one attendee who was someone that was very interested in the product and asking if they could do more of it. So we have not gotten any community pushback to my knowledge. If you've heard from some folks, let us know. We'd be happy to engage with them. But I think it's a well thought out site plan. Next up, and we have some conceptual renderings just to give you a flavor of the building. This is a look at kind of this would actually be the rear of the building. So you can see the parking there to the rear, but that gives you some idea of the size and scale. I don't think it's, out of context with a typical multifamily project, but we definitely want to distinguish ourselves from that. So that's a look at that. Happy to answer questions. I'm sure they have some. Jim is here. If we get technical questions about the plan, I might refer those to Nick Bouchon. If you have questions about traffic, I'll refer those to Michael Wickland.
Again, I just want to open it up to our board and the planning board. If anybody has a question, just raise your hand and I'll just acknowledge you as I see you. Mayor Pro Tem Garner, you had a question.
Do you have any renderings of the building beside Lidl and the church, kind of give us what
we're working on that view. This is a prototype that Cypress is using, right? So we kind of know the look and fit of it. So we have that rendering. We can work one up because I actually think it'd be nice to show you how those trees are screening on the front side.
Right. And to follow up, then Jay or Rob, do you know the height of the Lidl? I mean, that wasn't built that long ago. Could you give us some sort of comparison?
I am not sure. Let's see.
So I can think one of the benefits of the remote meetings, I can pull things up and share them pretty quickly. So I'm looking at the glass half full here. So this is the building pretty much constructed.
Okay.
Plus or minus 20 to that parapet would be my guess. I mean, Commissioner Urban may be able to eyeball it better. Obviously, that's higher there.
Thank you.
I think our plan will have a much more street friendly side.
Yeah, and also I just say that I can get the more exact numbers, but the height that was listed in the plan is to the very tip of the the very tip of the roof. It will feel shorter than that because of at the actual roof line. And I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but it'll be probably a good 6 feet less than what's stated as the maximum height on the plan.
And is
Ron, are
that
there
something
other, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is that something you expect to have before it goes to the planning board so they can have a?
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Do you have any other examples you could turn us to of already built out developments that are similar to this one?
We don't have any product, but we're working with several jurisdictions. We have renderings from the Huntersville rendering is what I just showed you, but we do not have a finished product. No, sir.
Yeah, no, this is,
Other questions or comments from the board or planning board? Commissioner Urban.
Yeah, I mean, as with all rezonings in the past, and Colin knows this, that we're looking for good visuals. We're looking for materials. We're looking for color. We're looking at the massing, the scale, that incorporated with the landscaping, et cetera. So the example is all well and good, but I want to see what it's intended to be for Matthews. Something that being a prototype, it still doesn't need to look like Anywhere USA. It needs to take in the context of Matthews. And I think, that's a bar you need to be reaching for. I think through the techniques of color, massing, and scale, you can begin to reduce the overall look of the buildings and its height and structure, especially against landscaping. The Lidl store is long and flat. I mean, Jay's right on target. It's probably about a 18 to 20 foot eave, and it slopes up to probably 24, 25 feet. It's not a good comparison because you'll be almost a 2-to-1 ratio in height there. But I think in looking at that corridor in the long term, you're going to see a greater density and verticality take place at that intersection. So I'm not sure 57 feet today is going to be an issue 20 years from now. But if we look at it today, it's an oh my God situation that you're across the street from a single family home. So we got to kind of look at that a little bit differently. But at the same time, we don't want to have a shear wall effect. We want to be sensitive to the mass and scale. So obviously, there's a lot of materials we need to see, or I need to see, to sort of get some assurances there. The other thing is how you connect via landscaping with Lidl is important, how you maintain that streetscape. And I think one thing I didn't notice is that you have an internal connection to Lidl, but has staff talked about potentially an internal connection for a future site to the east of you? So that the whole objective here, very much like on Monroe Road, is to create an internal network of connectivity that takes some of the burden off of Idlewild Road itself. So I would also sort of want to see what the thought process is there too, because your neighbor is not going to remain residential maybe for 5 or 10 more years, but will not be that way in 20 years. And to have an internal connection of parking lots and access driveways and all is going to go a long way. So I'd like to see that as well. So I think there's work to be done. We could debate the density issue because density is a matter of perception. And you could have 100 units an acre in that same 4-story building, or you could have 10 units to an acre in that same 4-story building. It's just all relative in how the design pulls that off. So I appreciate your presentation. We just need to see a lot. We need to see more. That's all there is to it.
And I will say, Jim is next to me and writing me notes. His architects are teed up. There is some point of me saying, well, let's test this before we go all that way. We were showing you a text amendment tonight for a new concept. We're showing you a site plan. I feel like, wanted to get the feedback from this meeting so we know what direction to set them off on, but they're ready to go, and we'll have those to the planning board.
Okay.
Mr. Dorsey, did you have a question or comment, sir?
Yes. So earlier in the presentation, I heard a comment that said the number of units there is your target unit. And if you had a 10-acre site, you'd have the same number of units. So I'm wondering how that plays between the the ideal site for this type of development? It seems to me I appreciate the density, but the site coverage is also pretty full. So those landscaping features around the site become all the more important. But again, my point is that 6 acre versus 10 acre. What is your ideal to have more open area, and some of that is getting sacrificed with this one?
I think this is fairly ideal. This is a great location, but just say Jim's partner tonight is in Indian Land making a similar presentation to them, same prototype. That site's just a little bit bigger. And so their density there is 12 units per acre. I think it's all contextual. This site we like because there are a lot of amenities nearby, right? I mean, could we find a 10-acre site to have lower density? Sure, we could. But it is pretty magic to find in the town of Matthews, walkable, literally next door to a grocery store, where your land use plan specifically calls for this. So this is, as the mayor asked, where have you had these built? We're in this process of finding sites, and this is really an ideal site.
And I would just add that, I mean, ideally, yeah, there would be a site that would have perhaps more acreage, but then it would sort of go counter to what we're trying to accomplish, which is not having a really expensive senior housing building. And so when you have to carry that extra land, that burden would end up on the residents, who then are really not getting anything new in the town of Matthews. They're basically just kind of getting the same old offering, which is, high price senior living. So there's a balancing. We want to have as much open space as possible, but there's also a balancing to make sure that we can keep the plan, reasonable.
Yeah, I did mention amenities. Someone asked, I think in the prior discussion about transit, there is a CATS transit stop at the Mentworth Center to the north. So it doesn't stop directly in front of this building, but it's easily walkable to transit, which is something you don't get when we're looking at the more suburban, larger acreage sites.
Other questions or comments from the town board or the planning board? Mr. Foster.
Just one question. I guess I should have seen it or caught it on the artist rendering there. Is this going to be a 4-story or a 5-story building at 57 feet?
4 stories.
Okay.
It does have a peaked roof, which is getting us a little bit higher. If it was a flat roof, it'd be lower.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Miller.
I think you're muted.
Thank you. I had a question under staff comments. It notes that improvements to be determined by TIA and NCDOT. Mike, I'm not familiar with TIA. Can someone remind me what that stands for?
Of course, I apologize. Traffic impact analysis. So that's the transportation study.
Okay.
For this site.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Not seeing any other comments or questions. Oh, there we go. Commissioner Bland. Yes, sir.
I was like, looking at the pictures that you showed a minute ago. Maybe those aren't the actual project as it's, they're showing it with cars and those are conceptual type things. But I counted the floors, unless I'd like to see it again. I thought I was always sure they had 5 floors of that.
Well, let's put it up, Jay.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong.
Thought I counted 4, so.
4 windows. I see 4 levels of windows.
Well, okay, I was mistaken. I just want to be sure that I wasn't sure I was seeing things. I probably was. Thank you.
It's like Tom Brady 4. Somebody will know what that means.
It's real tall, though. That's just what had me sort of too tall.
Jay, do you have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to remind the board. I mean, it is unusual that we have a hearing with this amount of uncertainty with the architectural design of the product. Commissioner Urban had a lot of questions about design and creating something unique to Matthews. In the past, the board has continued hearings when the there were additional unanswered questions to be resolved. So I think that's an option. Otherwise, your board's going to be seeing the designs for the first time on the decision date on November 9th. So it's, of course, the board's will, how you want to treat that. I just want to remind everyone.
Commissioner Urban.
Jay, thank you for reminding us. We don't get to use that often enough. You were talking a multi-million-dollar project. It could end up getting boxed into a corner. I think if we could continue the public hearing, that would be a wise idea. That also, Jay, that helps us get a little bit more running room with the planning board too, correct?
Yeah, it allows it to be kind of fully discussed in more detail before it gets sent to planning board so quickly, because their meeting's just here in 2 weeks. So they would have had, yeah.
If we could do that, that would go to, I think, to Renee's point and some other people's points about maybe some site sections, some elevations where you can see different heights and all in comparison to things. Jay is absolutely correct. We're used to seeing a lot more information coming out of the box, and the tool of extending the public hearing really does help sort of vet that. I don't want to box in Mike Foster and his group to have to respond to something, and then it's changing again when it comes back to us.
Mr. Urban, Mr. Mayor, Jay, we're happy. We'd be happy to do that. This is helpful for us, though, to kind of get this preliminary feedback on the concept. And as I said, Jim just mentioned me. He's got the architects ready to go. So I think we'll be fine doing that.
Commissioner Urban, would you like to make that a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to go ahead, and if we can just continue the motion for petition 2020-717. That's the correct one, right? Yes.
November 9th.
Do we have a second? Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Urban.
You do need to
second by Commissioner Miller.
Mr. Mayor, you do need to specifically put in the date.
Is that November 9th, Jeff?
Yes.
November 9th?
Okay, and then we continue with the public hearing until November 9th, 2020.
Second.
Okay, we have a amended motion to include the continuation until November 9th, made by Commissioner Urban, second by Commissioner Miller. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley.
Yes.
Commissioner Bland.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So this will be continued. Before we move on, Lori, did we receive any public comments on this one?
We did not.
Okay. So I guess the public not only has 24 hours, but this will be continued all the way to November 9th now for additional public comment. Again, that can be made at matthewsnc.gov or by phone at 704-708-1222. I want to thank the applicants and Mr. Will for this, and we'll continue this on November 9th.
Thank you all. We'll see you then.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to item 8C, zoning application 2020-718, Harley Davidson, to change the existing conditions in that BHCD district designated as 9205 East Independence Boulevard and further designated as tax parcel 193-191-01 and commonly known as the Harley Davidson dealership. Mr. Will.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is a change in zoning conditions. Next slide, Jay. The location is 9205 East Independence Boulevard. It's starred there on the zoning map. The existing zoning is BHCD. That is not proposed to be changed. The request of the applicant is to propose to change the facade of the main building, add a new soundstage, and a new covered exterior terrace. Next slide, please. So this is an aerial, gives you a little bit better view. So the star is where the Harley Davidson dealership is. They're on 74. They're As I mentioned, they're proposing facade changes. And the next slide shows the old versus the new. I have made a note here that the proposed signage is for illustrative purposes only. Signage will be approved through a separate sign permitting process, but just for visual effects, they have the signs on the proposed facade. Let's go to the site plan, which is on the next slide. Okay, so they're also proposing 2 new exterior structures. One is a proposed sound stage, which is towards the east of the property there, west, excuse me, and a covered exterior terrace, which comes right off of the main building. I think my next slide zooms in a little bit closer so we can have a better look as to where these are. The proposed covered terrace on the side of the main building is 750 square feet. And the future soundstage is located over in the stormwater retention area, and it is 1,250 square feet proposed. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the soundstage. The next slide shows sort of its design and how it will be elevated within located over the part of the stormwater retention area. And then the next slide shows sort of an artist or a photographic rendering of the soundstage. Again, you can see it's located or would be located above stormwater retention area. The next slide is staff comments and outstanding issues. Public Works and the Planning Department both have concerns of the continued operation and maintenance of the stormwater retention feature with the placement of the elevated soundstage. Recommended moving the stage to a location outside of the stormwater retention area. But no concerns over the proposed facade or the covered exterior terrace. And that concludes my report on the Harley-Davidson change in zoning conditions.
Rob, do we have anybody from Public Works on the call?
Oh, I do not know. I don't see.
Yes, the question I would
CJ
have
O'Neill is here. We can allow him
replacement-
to speak. Mr. Mayor,
CJ is on the call?
CJ is given just a moment. He'll be available to speak.
Okay. I'll wait till he joins us.
Hi, Mr. Mayor.
Hey, CJ, thank you for joining us. I'm sure you've reviewed this proposal from Harley-Davidson, and I'm wondering if you have any comment on the effectivity of the retention pond if this stage is built within its confines.
So that was designed by a professional engineer. So we typically look at it, but if an engineer seals that, we assume that it's good. We did have some concerns though with the maintenance of the facility, especially with the piers that they had holding up the stage, and if there might be issues with equipment running into those and having issues with the support of the stage.
But as far as the functionality of the retention pond, the water would just run off the top of the roof and into the retention pond as it does now.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Do we have other questions for Rob or CJ? Commissioner Urban.
Rob, can you just talk to the sort of general intention is that how does a retail occupancy get to the level of having a soundstage? Meaning, could Kohl's have a soundstage?
That's an excellent question. Well, they hold a lot of events, and as a part of their prior rezoning when this it is unique, and I think it's kind of considered an accessory use, but not one that's commonly found at a retail establishment.
Okay, so my follow-up question would be is, have they established as part of this when performances would be held, timeframes, and the number of performances? I mean, is this going to be every weekend something's going to happen? This is kind of analogous to the Covenant Day ball fields with the tournaments being played and the bats being dinging and the amplified sound and stuff like that, and the residences right by that. I mean, I live a mile away and I can hear their performances as well. So do those criteria also have to be set?
They have a limited amount of performances that are, or events, I guess I should say, that are allowed per their original zoning. I don't have those right here in front of me, but there's about 10, I think, different days.
So as part of this, we potentially will have a list of number of events and more pertinent detail information to put in his record.
Yes, we can do that. Okay.
And then my last question is unrelated to the sound stage. We sort of overlooked it completely. Is the nature of the facade renovation. Jay used to get after me all the time about the use of metal materials, and it looks to be like metal perforated screening. Is that because it was only downtown, or do we allow metals outside the downtown overlay?
That was just the downtown overlay that we have a prohibition on metal siding. Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure, because I just know you're anti-metal. Thank you.
Mr. Whitley, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Is the petitioner here? Because I never seen a stage with a motorcycle, and I know sometimes they have events, but I just want to hear from them their intent with the stage, and I think they have a little patio area too.
All right, we do have some applicant representatives here. I don't know who's going to do this, Mr. Hawthorne or Mr. Cabiza.
Yes, guys. Good night, everybody. Well, the main intent of the stage, I mean, as you said, they have some events, minor events every month. We intend this to be like a kind of a presentation for new motorcycles. If you see the details, we have a ramp on the back, so we can have a presentation of the new motorcycle, the new models. And we do have a training riding academy on the back. So that's why this becomes part of the events that they have once a month to promote these motorcycles and to promote the riding academy. I mean, the idea to put it in front of the lounge and on top of the retention area was because, I mean, we did a couple studies, and we did not want to reduce the amount of parking of the space. I mean, we wanted to keep the same amount of parking, and we didn't want to interfere into the circulation of the fire truck. So we did some fire analysis, and we established that the best place to put the stage was in this area. And we have also the civil engineer on the line. We have left 8 feet below the stage to be able to accommodate any equipment or any persons to doing the maintenance for the stage under the structure. So that's something that we have had in considerations when we designed the stage.
Do you have a formal presentation you'd like to go through? And then maybe we'll reserve questions for the end.
Yes, this is the presentation you're looking at. I mean, if you could go back one slide.
Yes, sir. Sorry. There we go.
Right here. So basically, I mean, the owner of the dealership just acquired this dealership a year and a half ago. I mean, he wanted to bring the building into more of the architecture and the character of the neighborhood and of the corridor. You see, this corridor has a lot of dealerships, and all of them has this very modern looking. So we wanna try to accomplish a seamless architecture between the corridor. Right now, the building that is existing is got a big mass. So when we're trying to do with this design on the facade was to try to break the mass of the building. We are incorporating a lot of storefront as well. We'll bring in when we do this storefront, we're bringing out a lot of daylight. We try to also play with the energy codes, daylight harvesting into the store, so we can play into the energy codes as well. The new facade, I mean, we have created different elements. If you see, the old building was a square block, and on this building we have different levels. We have used the mesh. It's got one level. Then below that is another level. That is the gray material that is being raised 2 feet from the existing parapet, and below that is the white building. So we are giving the different levels to try to break the mass and have more articulation into the architecture. On the sides on the back, we're going to maintain the same concept, and we're just going to do some painting. And the terrace is going to look the same as you'd see at this canopy. We have the canopy with an orange line defining the horizontally of the building, trying to make it more sleek. So the way that the lounge is going to look is the same as you see this entrance right here. We have the motorcycles below, and then we have that cover in the middle on the top. We place these elements on that side of the property on the west as well, because they have this club that meets every Sunday, and they create. I mean, there's a lot of bikes coming here to the space. So we're trying to keep this on the back to try to contain it, and it's not visible to all the neighbors and to all the people from Independence. If you go to the next slide, please. The next one. This is the elevation of the lounge. This space is already existing, being used for this. It's a space that is in front of the parking lot, and the array was used for this function. So what we're trying to do is try to contain it, trying to give it a more eloquent and define the space. So that's why we just cover it. But it's an open lounge. It's not going to be a structure that is going to be closed or is going to be creating any additional mass to the building. If you go to the next one, please. This is the stage. So here you can see the section of the stage that is going to be raised 4 feet 10 from the asphalt, and it's gonna be able to breathe all around. And below that, we're gonna have 8 feet of height, so it can be easy accessible for the maintenance. We do have obviously the ramp that goes around the back for handicap access, and as I was mentioned before, if we need to present a new motorcycle, a new model, it will be the place to show it to the public. And if you go to the next one, please. Here you see the view, the rendering of the stage, and you can see that it's open on the front, it's open on the sides. We can work with the structural engineer to see if we can reduce the amount of piers, if that will help to accomplish a better maintenance to the building. And you can go to the next one, please. Here you can see on the left hand of the elevation the continuation of the canopy. So the idea is to keep the same line to make it very, very consistent, very, very symmetrical building. So we're gonna have the canopy continue with that orange line that is like an identification color for our client, for Harley Davidson. So that's basically the project that we have, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I've got a quick question either for the applicant or maybe CJ. What sort of maintenance do you have to do underneath down by where the piers are? What is there to maintain? Just curious. I can't imagine what you have to do. Maybe paint or something underneath the stage.
Well, I mean, usually, sometimes there's. I mean, if I may, what we see when we had this request is that sometimes there's grass that grows in the structure. So sometimes they have to go and cut the weeds and cut the grass. That's mostly what needs
maintenance.
Yeah, it's not
It's maintenance of the actual pond, not maintenance.
Yeah,
of the structure. I got you.
So it's a very.
Questions for? Go ahead, sir.
No, I was going to say that kind of maintenance is maybe once every 2 months, every 3 months. You know, it's not like something that is got to be maintained every other day or 2 times a week. So, I mean, we're giving 8 feet of clearance just to be able to facilitate that.
Commissioner Miller, you have a question.
Thank you, sir. I guess parallel to your question, do these retention ponds ever have to be dredged with silt to reduce the silt, and would that weaken the piers?
I have to. I don't know if Jay, can you give access to our civil engineer? Maybe he will be better indicated to answer that question. Jay.
CJ, can you weigh in on that, or is that a county stormwater function?
So, yeah, you do have sediment buildup over time, and that's kind of what I was referring to with the maintenance. My only hesitancy is that if you get a piece of equipment down there to try to clean it out, those piers, at least what appeared like on the drawings that I saw, looked like they were cinder blocks. I don't know if there were I-beams inside of that, but if a piece of equipment hit it, that was more my concern.
Thank you.
Jay, can you allow Mr. Hawthorne to speak?
I do not have the ability to unmute him. Lori, can you do that?
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Mr. Hawthorne.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. So I did a site visit to the for the site, and right now, I got down into the retention pond, and there's really, right now it's kind of like maybe it's overgrown with weeds and stuff and just different vegetation. But as far as there's a gate, and there's probably about you have to jump in about 4 feet to get in. There's no type of access to that retention area. I'm not sure how it is being maintained, but there wasn't any indication that there's really a lot of sediment buildup in that area. The way the system is designed is more like it's kind of like a holder. It is a retention pond. It's not really a detention pond. It's a retention pond, and it kind of backs up into that area. And I think that there are oversized pipes on the site that does a lot of the detention on site. Right now, I'm working with Jonathan Rett from Mecklenburg County to kind of just give him an idea of the watershed area that's draining to this retention pond, and his one of our suggestions was going to be with the soundstage being in that place, most of the vegetation underneath the soundstage would probably die. And so we were going to propose to put geotextile fabric and some river rock on top of that, and just kind of have it there to reduce any type of erosion, any type of silt that will be wash away whenever there's a major storm event or anything like that.
Thank you, Mr. Hawthorne. Any other questions from the Planning Board or the Board of Commissioners? The applicants or Will or DJ? Commissioner Urban.
I guess as a follow-up to my first thing, if we're going to have a soundstage there, I'd like to have, if this is within our purview, which I think it probably is, Charlie can confirm or deny this, I think we'd want to sort of understand a listing of events and the days and times. I'd hate to go into a Sunday and have noise or activity start at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday. And at what time in the evening would it go to? I mean, I know we have ordinances regarding these things, but I also know that there's residential neighborhoods, immediately nearby there, and we've had this issue before in other locations.
Yeah.
Mr. Buckley, do you want to weigh in on that at all?
Noise is appropriate for zoning. That's correct.
Okay. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. I'd like to make a comment in general. I'm sorry, Mayor Pro Tem Garner, go ahead.
I just wanted to make some comments, not really questions, but I think that first of all, the design is really is appropriate for that area, and that shopping center itself needs such an uplift that this could really create some excitement for that area. And for the soundstage, it's not like we're talking about that a lot, but I don't think a soundstage is really that far of a departure when you consider that these big shopping centers that are popping up create more of an atmosphere and more of a branding. So music is part of shopping now, and this could really bring something to that area again, to make it to give it an uplift that it really needs.
Thank you. The only comment I was going to make, I was somewhat surprised. I'm not I don't own a Harley, but having worked in Matthews for many decades, and I've seen a lot of people from all over the country come into our town, it's somewhat of a tourist destination. A lot of people, when they go to a new town, they want to go to the Harley dealership to get the latest T-shirt or whatever. So it does bring, there is a lot of interest in that. And I think that when people come to Charlotte to visit, they probably come on into Matthews, many that ride Harleys to visit the dealership. So it is a Harley dealership here is an asset to our town. I do think Commissioner Urban brought up some good points for those that live in the area. We certainly don't want, concerts going on until late hours or early morning or whatever. So those are good points as well. So I hope the applicant can bring back some sort of schedule of events or at least a general schedule of events so we can keep an eye on that as well. Any other comments? We're going to wrap this up. Not seeing any. Okay, thank you. Lori, have we received any public comment?
We have not, sir.
Okay, no public comment. I'll remind the public that they have 24 hours to submit comments by email to matthews@matthewsnc.gov or by phone at 704-708-1222. That's 704-708-1222. Thank you, gentlemen, applicants. Appreciate you coming by this evening. And thank you, Rob. You've got quite a workout tonight. So I will entertain a motion to reconvene our regular meeting now.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Miller, second by Commissioner McCool. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, so that passes unanimously. We now stand back in our regular meeting for agenda item 10, planning and development business. I will say that it's always fun having these virtual meetings because you guys keep moving around on what I can see. So Ken was in the upper left-hand corner. Now he's at the bottom right. So I don't know how we keep moving. I'm looking to folks, but hope I can remember to call out everybody. Let's move on to agenda number 10. I'll receive a report from the planning board. Who's going to do that? Mr. Foster?
Yeah, as soon as I can unmute myself. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board of Commissioners. I have the planning board report from our meeting on September 22nd, 2020. We had one application for review and are forwarding it you tonight for final decision. That's rezoning application 2020-715, Williams Business Properties LLC, R15 to R12 MF CD at 1700 Weddington Road. Members of the planning board received updates on the site plan, including a reduction of the maximum dwelling units to 98 with a minimum of 60 units as attached townhome style structures. The planning board recommended approval of the updated application 5-2. The request was found to be consistent with the Matthews land use plan, as it states that 60% of the land area of Matthews is zoned for single family, and that additional housing styles should be allowed to provide for housing diversity. If developed at a density under 6 units per acre, the development would be of a density lower than other multifamily communities in Matthews. The following goals under Policy 1 of the Land Use Plan are addressed. It provides expanded zoning options that will encourage developers to design niche neighborhoods that will positively impact residential neighborhoods, and it actively endorses a variety of housing values and residency types, both owner and renter based, to be built within the town of to the local development community. The request was found to be reasonable because it allows for the addition of new housing opportunities in the form of a rental community with a significant number of townhome styles within walking or biking distance of the Greenway in downtown Matthews. Development would create an attractive streetscape along an identified gateway corridor into downtown Matthews. The scale and architecture contribute to the small town feel and the character desired by the citizens and the town government. 2 other items for information only. The planning board, along with Jay Camp, had a discussion of planning board goals for 2020 and beyond. We had an open discussion on what the board members would like to see, maybe would like to get more involved in. The 2 items that came up to the top basically were be as involved as possible as the Cat Silver Line development. And we already have a leg up on that since we have Natasha Edwards, Carrie Lamson, and Jim Johnson already on the Silver Line committee. So we can get good reporting from them. But there was a lot of interest in having as much input as possible in where the line goes, what goes along the line. So we will follow up on that with the planning team. The other item that we discussed was communication between the various boards and committees in the town of Matthews. This has come up before. Really, all the boards and committees tend to work in a bit of a vacuum. They each have their role, but there are so many things that we believe that could be cross-functional, things that the Board of Adjustment deals with, that the planning board should know about, maybe collaborate on however we can. Tree and Appearance Committee, that comes into play in so many of these zoning discussions. So we'll also follow up on that with the planning team and to see if we can come up with some sort of ongoing communication between the groups to see if we can improve communication and just have a better comfort level that we know what else is going on in the town other than strictly zoning. And the last item is we made the decision as a group to continue having Zoom meetings at least for the October 27th meeting, and we'll play it month to month after that. And that's the end of the report.
Thank you, Mike. Hazen, you may want to comment on this. I recall at least once or maybe more than once in the past, we had meetings at town hall with all of the boards together, at least representatives from all the boards, and each board gave a 10-minute update on what they were doing. Perhaps we could do that again when we start meeting in person. You recall doing that? I mean, I remember.
Yes, sir. I'm sure there's folks on this. Yeah, we've done that. I think that's a healthy little kind of cross-pollination, and I think did we feed everybody? Lori, do you remember? Did we feed everybody?
Yes, we did. Yeah, we had a dinner.
We did.
So that makes it even more enticing. But that's a great idea, Mike, because we certainly want our boards, for one thing, not working contrary to what, one board working against the wishes of another. So, and probably there is a lot of overlap. So I think it's a great idea. Maybe that's something we can mark down to do again. Probably the earliest we could do it would be in the spring sometime, but I think that's a great idea. And while I have representatives of the planning board on the call tonight, I want to thank you once again. I think we all realize that perhaps more than any other board, the planning board takes a lot of time and effort. And when we have those that are multitasking, Jim and Natasha and Jana that are on multiple boards, we really appreciate all that you do. Thank you. Let's, are there any questions for before we move into our business tonight? Now move on to agenda item 10B1, zoning application 2020-712, Family Investments LLC to change the zone from office to RVS on that certain property located on North Fremont Street, across the street from 313 and 317 North Fremont Street, and being designated as tax parcel 1932721. Mr. Will, once again.
Yes, we're in the home stretch, Mayor. The applicant has requested withdrawal of the application at this time because of concerns that were raised at the public hearing and the planning board and the Board of Commissioners. And staff's recommendation is to withdraw at this time.
Okay. Have any questions or motions? Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. I'll make a motion that we accept the withdrawal of this application from 2020-712 Morris Family Investments.
Second.
A motion from Commissioner Miller, second by Commissioner Urban. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley.
Yes.
Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yes.
And I'll do the new thumbs up thing. I'll vote yes as well. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Move on to item 10B2, zoning application 2020-715 Williams Business Properties, 1700 Weddington Road, R15, R12 CD on that certain property located at 1700 Weddington Road and further designated as tax parcel 2272101. Mr. Will, once again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Williams Business, the Lat Purser and Associates, who's the applicant for this rezoning petition, has requested that the board defer their decision for another month because the applicant is interested in having another community meeting. And if it pleases the board, I have a brief presentation. They have significantly reduced their number of dwelling units that they're proposing. And I have revised site plan and also information from CMS regarding the impact of both the old and the new proposal on the school system.
I take it this is a relatively brief presentation?
It is.
But please go ahead. I think
Okay, thank
would like
you.
to see that.
All right, next slide, Jay. This is just a reminder of where the site is, 1700 Weddington Road. They are, this is the former site plan, which had 4 apartment buildings, 37 townhomes, 243 parking spaces. The density was 7.79 units per acre. Now their new site plan is a reduction from 131 units to 98 units. There's only 1 apartment building. It's located in the rear of the parcel, rear of the property. and there'll be 68 townhome units and 200 parking spaces. They have reduced the density to 5.82 dwelling units per acre, and the amount of undisturbed open space stays the same. The next two slides are just their renderings, architectural renderings, which haven't changed. And then we have some information from CMS. This is for the old proposal, the original site plan. And so as you can see, they were proposing to generate 37 new students. I have updated information that is not a part of my presentation slides because I just got it, but the development is now expected to add 24 students to the area, and we're still over capacity at Providence Spring Elementary School, but the new number will be 134%. And the other two, Crestdale Middle and Providence High, those two numbers stay the same, at 94 and 107. As Mr. Foster had mentioned in his planning report, the planning board recommended approval of the revised site plan 5-2, and staff recommends deferral of the decision per the applicant's request at this time.
I see that Mr. Robinson is with us as well as John Carmichael. So would either of you gentlemen like to speak?
It's just if there are any questions, Mr. Mayor. Jack, did you have anything?
Anyone have any questions? Okay.
No questions.
I'll entertain a motion to defer. Commissioner Urban.
Yeah, go ahead and make a motion to defer zoning petition 2020-715 / Williams Business Properties at 1700 Weddington Road to November 9th.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Urban, a second from Commissioner Whitley. We'll take a roll call. Commissioner Bland.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley.
Yes.
Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller. Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. So this matter will be deferred until our November 9th meeting. Thank you. Now, move on to item 10B3, site plan approval for 1935 Rice Road mixed use development. Jay, you gonna take this one?
Sure. I guess it's a new theme now. We've got withdrawals and deferrals this evening. This is another project, another site plan that we are recommending deferral to the next meeting. This will allow for planning board to review several administrative amendments and a public improvement variance that will come up here at the end of the month. So those items do need to be taken care of before your board makes really takes a final vote on the approval.
Would someone like to make a motion? Commissioner Urban.
We need to mention, I need to go back and recuse myself from this petition. My firm is consulting on the land development for this project.
Okay, Charlie, refresh my memory. Do we need to vote to recuse Mr. Urban?
To recuse, you don't need to vote. It's only to excuse that you need to vote.
Okay, thank you. So we will recuse Commissioner Urban, and I still would entertain a motion to defer this item.
Can I ask a question before we make a motion, please?
Absolutely.
I'm uncertain as to what the location is of this Rice Road development. There's not a map included, and I'm confused as to where it is. Is it the church property at Sam Newell and Rice, or is it at the other end?
Let me pull up the site plan. I'll give you a quick refresher.
Okay.
Let's see. So this is the property that currently has a former daycare on it at Rice Road Extension, East Point. It fronts on Samuel Road. I guess just behind, actually just behind Harley Davidson, where we were just talking a few moments ago.
So it's across Sam Newell by the movie theater area?
Exactly. So the movie theater is over. That's the parking lot where my cursor is for the movie theater. And then Harley Davidson's right here.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Whitley. Go ahead, sir.
That we defer site plan approval for 1935 Rice Road project for 1 month.
Second.
Till November.
We have a motion from Commissioner Whitley, a second by Commissioner McCool. Roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, so that passes 6-0 with Mr. Urban standing as recused this one. So that passes. So we will see this one again as well on November 9th. Let's move on to item 10B4, consider request for revision of fee in lieu calculation for Phillips Village. Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right, so as part of in our Unified Development Ordinance, as part of any subdivision in Matthews, we do require the dedication of open space or recreational land to our Parks Department. The minimum requirement for that is 4 acres, or if an applicant chooses to, they can also pay a fee in lieu. So as part of that fee in lieu, there's 3 factors that affect that. It's the market value, the total acreage of the site, and then the number of new units that are created. And so what the applicant is appealing is the market value of the property. So the way that we determine that is based off of the county's tax appraisals. However, this property was mislabeled as commercial property during that tax appraisal. And so what the applicant is doing is coming to the town with a new appraisal showing that it's residential, or as if it was residential property. One of the reasons for that is they're unable to petition the county to have that changed from commercial to residential until January. And so as part of their development goes on, they won't be able to have the final plat signed off until this fee in lieu is paid. So currently, the property is valued at $810,000. Originally, before the market or the county reappraisals that happened, it was valued at $200,000, and then the new proposal for the site is $340,000. This did go to the Plan Review Committee. The Plan Review Committee noted that the new appraisal, the properties were, or the comparable properties were reasonable. There was the Tennefield Drive site on Rice Road, as well as the Rice Road subdivision, and then 2 properties in Charlotte along Margaret Wallace. Then I believe that's it. If the board chooses to, they can, or the board can adjust the value that was set from the appraisal. The board does have 30 days to make that determination. If there's disagreement still between the applicant and the board on that final appraisal, or the board's appraisal, then there would need to be a second appraisal done, and that cost would be split between the board and the applicant as well.
Okay, so to be clear, Darren, staff is recommending that the $340,000 is reasonable?
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Miller.
Thank you. I feel that since the property was mistakenly marked as commercial instead of residential land during a reval, that it's appropriate it's an appropriate amount of fee in lieu for Phillips Village, and I recommend or make a motion that we accept that revision.
Okay, we have a motion. Commissioner Miller, do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Whitley. Is there any discussion before I take the vote? I would just like to say that there have been cases in the past where the town has requested a second evaluation, but in this case, as staff believes this is a reasonable evaluation, I think that's kind of just a wasteful step and would probably be detrimental to the applicant as well. So I will vote in favor of this, but we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well, so that passes unanimously. Thank you. Move on to agenda item number 11, the consent agenda.
I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda A through D3.
Second.
Okay. A motion from Commissioner Whitley, a second from Commissioner Miller. Take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll go on to agenda item number 12, unfinished business. 12A, review capital improvement plan CIP fund balance for projects. Mr. Blodgett.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. I hope we did not overwhelm you with information. This is a great document. I want to thank Becky Hawk for putting this together. And Becky, feel free to chime in as we go through here. What I would say is, and I talked to Commissioner Miller earlier today, I do think we need to spend time just digesting this CIP just on the face of it, right? It's multi-year. There's a bunch of money. There's roads that we've talked about that we want that like aren't even shown as viable, like West Charles Street, for instance, or Ames Street. You know, those come up periodically. And the purpose, the reason we put it on the agenda is, if you'll recall, at the last meeting, we had discussions about possibly appropriating $560,000 from the undesignated fund balance. And staff, particularly me, I was concerned about, okay, how's our undesignated fund balance look, one, and then two, how does it impact this CIP? So we said, well, why don't we bring this CIP back to the board so you can see it? But let me just say, I also think it's fair if somebody said, that's a lot to digest. And, you know, it's what time? I don't know, you know, it's 9 o'clock on a Monday. So, but I guess what I'd like to say, just a couple quick things, and I'll answer any questions, is that the CIP undesignated fund balance, the undesignated fund balance, which is our rainy day account, and the undesignated is very important. That means it's you, the board, can appropriate it any way that you see fit. While the number is the same, about $6.7 million, which is pretty good, the percent does go down to 26%. Last year at this time it was at 30%. I would still say that's pretty good compared to our peers. So the question in my mind was, or is, before we go to when we go to the next item and we have talk about appropriating funds for this design work on this project, what does our CIP look like for, in particular, next year? Now, just remember, these CIPs are, they're multi-year, but you approve them 1 year at a time, and you guys as a board are not locked in. So don't feel like, oh, well, you know, this shows we're going to buy X next fiscal year, and we got to do this. Well, you technically don't. Now, staff will probably say we would recommend it, but just know you have some freedom. So what I did was went through, I focused on fiscal year 21-22, which is going to be what we're going to go into next year. And if you go through there, and Becky's laid it out very logically, you just got to spend a little time because we got different buckets of money, like we got fees in lieu of, or we have tourism funds, and they've been allocated for different projects. But the bottom line is next year, if the board approves the CIP that you're looking at in front of you, we would need about $430,000 more than we have designated in this year's budget. And more than likely, the most logical place to take it, if you agree with it, would be from the undesignated fund balance. Now, you can always raise taxes, and we may have a very revenue-rich year, and you may be able to find it. So I guess that would be kind of that broad overview. And I do think, and Commissioner Miller said this to me earlier, we need a 5:30 meeting to really digest this thing. And you're exactly right. This is a complicated document, and you may say, well, you know what, we need to build some of those roads. We need to talk about a bond referendum. So, it's very multifaceted. So I hope I haven't confused anybody, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Miller.
Thank you. The caveat to that would be I would request on the left column attachment, if you can scroll up or scroll down, whatever. The left column currently says total cost. I would ask that we revise that total cost to be Matthews cost so that we know how to prioritize $300,000-400,000 at a pop or 20,000, and it helps us to prioritize monetarily. Please.
So just to kind of reiterate that, so like for Independence Boulevard, it says $1.3 billion. Those are state dollars. And Commissioner Miller, you're saying, can we segment out what's DOT dollars, what's town dollars, et cetera?
Yeah, just we're spending our money. So if we just talk about what Matthews is or 20% of that'd be very helpful, in my opinion.
And Commissioner Miller, that is demonstrated, Jay, if you can scroll down, should be on the right there. That is demonstrated on these slides here at the bottom where it provides a summary. So the Matthews costs are listed by revenue source for transportation projects here. That does segment out what is state funding and what is outside resources versus Matthews dollars. And then there's part of the document further on that does further distinguish the Matthews funds. So hopefully those two areas start to meet what I think you're talking about wanting to see.
Are they individualized?
In what regard?
Is that a summary from top to bottom? Or is that a line item?
So the screen prior, Jay, I'm sorry to make you bounce around. So each of these shows the total project costs, and then anything that's showing up in the fiscal years 1920, 2021, so on, those are the town costs. And then down below, it shows it by funding type. That would take all of those totals, and then it shows them by funding type. So if you're looking at what's going to potentially impact the general fund, when you're looking at this, in 2021, we had 12,000, it's really little font, 12,300, I think it is, in this fiscal year. And then we had some debt financing of about 400,000. But those were the only two things that touched the general fund in this current fiscal year.
I guess what's confusing to me is we all have wish lists of what we want to do, and we all have wish lists of what we want to talk about. And for example, topics for the planning conference, we got a Excel spreadsheet and asked us to please rank these items and we would rank them, and then the board decided what were the most popular. And the same could apply here. If we're tight on money and everyone wants to get their project done, doesn't it make sense to have how much the town is spending on Highway 51 at Monroe Road, or betterment improvements at the overpass at Independence, things like that, individually, so that we can figure out where our priorities are versus roads, parks, things like that? It's so much information. I can't grasp it.
So what I would say is it is on this document. I think we just have to go really just spend some time here. The only intention of this tonight was to just remind the board, undesignated fund balance is kind of a sacred cow, and we got all these competing needs, and should we be spending it, in my opinion, no, on preliminary engineering for McKee Road, which is also a great project, by the way, but we will spend some time going over this with the board, because we got bond referendums to think about. There's a lot of things that you guys as a board need to consider, and we will revisit this CIP, and we'll go much, much slower in it too.
Could this be a 5:30 meeting, do you think, Hazen and Becky?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had also expected to have it be a part of the conversation at our November mini planning conference. So you'll see it again at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Did we lose the mayor? Oh, there he is.
Commissioner Urban.
I agree with Jeff a whole 100%. I mean, this is a lot to digest, whether it's 9 o'clock on a Monday night or not. The only other thing that I see is if there's a means or another table or another chart in which you just take, for example, the 21-22 year and just list public works, public safety, Parks and Rec, and show them what all their asks are for that 1 year. So sort of look at a snapshot of that year, because what happens is we're looking at them individually, and then you scroll to the next page, and you really need to sort of add that in your process. And so if there's a way to sort of snapshot those individual years for each particular sector, that might be helpful to see the big picture, because I think that the total nut that you had was, was tens of millions of dollars. And it can be very overwhelming, not realizing that it is spread over a period of time. But maybe by looking at each individual years, the bigger thing, maybe something will flush out in terms of the conversation about the bonds as well.
Fair point.
I take it from the comments that we will take this for information only tonight and perhaps discuss in more detail at 5:30 at an upcoming meeting.
Yeah, or at the mini conference.
Thank you. Or at the mini conference. Okay. So can we move on? I don't think we need to vote on that. Right? Just do
Correct.
12B, consider pursuit of bonus allocation for Greylock Ridge Road extension. Hazen and Dana.
So Dana is joining us. So at the last board meeting, we talked about this bonus allocation opportunity of Greylock Ridge Road. I came here 17 years ago, and it was a line on the map. It's pretty amazing. I think that there's funds available, and of course, having Dana on our staff is really a godsend as far as staying on top of stuff. I think that I think there's no doubt of the value and importance of this road, and it would go wouldn't go across railroad tracks, but it would go to East Charles Street and East John Street. I think where I got a little bit concerned is when we started talking about using $560,000 in undesignated fund balance money, which is somewhere around 8%. And as you guys saw at the last item, there's a whole bunch of competing needs. One of the things I've liked about the properties we've recently talked about is there's using undesignated funds, but there's a way to finance this. In this case, this preliminary design, there's no way to finance it. So I think one of the questions was, would we receive extra credit in the points evaluation system if we put in the money? And I think the short answer to that was no. However, there was a caveat about the cost effectiveness criteria, and that we might be able to get some points. The other thing to remember, well, this is a very good project, right? There's $25 million plus or minus, and it's four plus or minus $1 million. So we're not trying to grab it all by ourselves. It's very close to 485. So it makes it a strong project. Again, going back to the undesignated fund balance conversation, we are at a AA plus. That's the only better bond rating than that is a AAA. One of the things they do look at is our fund balance percentage. Again, it continues to be healthy, so I want to make sure we're being thoughtful about that. I think Dana and Susan's biggest concern, which is totally valid, is this money has to be allocated by June of 2024, which sounds like a long ways away. But as I understand it, the General Assembly approved this in June of 19, and Dana, correct me if I'm wrong. And so they're just now getting into our hands, and it's already been a year. And, pushing DOT is, like pushing water. So their concerns are, and maybe I'm being too blunt here, is they don't trust, and I'm not sure I do either, totally trust DOT to look out for our interests. And if everything gets put in their hands as far as getting the design firm, how quickly can they move as an organization? And before we know it, are we at June 2024 and the funds aren't allocated? That's not a good scenario. So in my recommendation, what I do say is I do not, while that's a valid point, I do not recommend that we appropriate or contribute $560,000 for the preliminary engineering. That we do ask our engineering staff, who are obviously Dana and Susan, to put together some kind of timeline, a detailed timeline that we meet this June 2024 deadline. Then we're going to have to monitor that, and if we see slippage, we're going to need to get on it. Now, I suggested some kind of somebody to advise us on that. I don't even know if that group consultant type of folks are out there and are willing to push DOT. But I think I'm confident that we can do that and can save ourselves $560,000. The only thing I would add is if we see CRTPO has changed their process about some kind of contribution or match, we do want to be able to come back to the board and say, guess what? If we threw $100,000 in this, we're going to get extra points. It'll put us over the top. I don't know if that's going to happen, but we do want that flexibility. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
I have a question. And the reason I said during our last meeting that I supported putting this money up front now is I have zero faith and confidence that NCDOT is going to be able to deliver anything in a timely manner based on what they've done lately here in Matthews. And so if this is a case that we can pay $562,000 now or 800 and something thousand after June of 24, you can or pay me later. The fiscally smart thing to do would be to pay for it right now if we want to go forward with this project, in my viewpoint. So what am I missing? We're going to gamble, roll the dice for about 300,000 that DOT is going to come through for us.
So
is that a correct?
Well, I look at it a little differently. I don't see. So right now, what we're saying is we'd go $560,000, but we're not sure that we can't make that deadline. I mean, we may not have confidence levels, but I would rather play that, not put that in, knowing, okay, the risk is in 2024 of more money, but I'm not convinced that I'm confident or comfortable that we'll make that June 24 deadline.
How much of that confidence relies on DOT to come through for it?
Did you say that one more time, Mayor? You broke up.
My concern is does that confidence rely on CDOT coming through for us and doing anything for us, or is this just our staff meeting the deadline? We're having to wait on DOT to do portions of that, correct?
Yes, DOT would manage this project.
I guess I don't understand your confidence that we're going to meet the June 24 deadline. If it's going to cost us 40% more if we don't meet it.
But we got 4
Why would we not?
years. Well, I mean, one, we don't, I mean, I'm not, I would not recommend we put up $560,000, and I would rather see us wait and have to, in 4 years, put up $800,000. I'd rather play, that's $300,000 over 4 years time. There's no guarantee that they're not going to meet this deadline. I mean, what would happen is they would not, their General Assembly has allocated this money and DOT's not going to make it. I could see the General Assembly coming back and saying, look, this is DOT's fault. It's not the town of Matthews. We need to reallocate this for another 2 years or something like that.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I'm ready to make a motion if you are.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I'll make a motion that we authorize staff to apply for the BA grant and not contribute the $560,000 to the project. Engineering staff will prepare a detailed timeline that will meet the June 4th deadline. The project timeline will be regularly monitored, and if the timeline slippage becomes evident, allow engineering staff to come back with a different plan to hire a firm to push NCDOT on our behalf. Also, if we learn during the CRTPO review process that a contribution match from the town will guarantee funding of the road, that staff has the ability to bring back to the town board for consideration this project.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Miller, a second from Commissioner Whitley. We'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
And I vote negative, so that passes 6-1. All right, we'll move on to item 12C, consider temporary construction easement and permanent easement agreements, Mecklenburg County for Irvins Creek Greenway. Hazen.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. I'm standing in for Corey. Jay, could you go down to the map? The map's pretty straightforward. So the county is going to build Irwin's Creek, and oh man, that's tough to see. We got a better, okay. So Irwin's, where the star is part of the property that's recently been appropriated to us. So the county is looking for an easement so they can connect the greenway to Keziah Road. It's really an asset to all the neighborhoods that connect back in there. So I'm recommending approving this agreement.
I'll make a motion that we approve this agreement for the easement, Mecklenburg County for Irvin Creek Greenway.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Whitley, second from Commissioner McCool.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Sure, go ahead.
It talks about a temporary construction easement and then a permanent greenway easement. Are those considered two separate items, or we can roll this into one motion?
That's one motion. It's in the same document.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I'll call roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Go on to agenda item number 13, new business. Consider endorsement of Cultural Diversity Committee's 21-day Racial Equity Challenge. So I'm not sure who did this. Is Natisha online with? Yes, I see Natisha.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and commissioners, and might I ask that next time ladies go first. But seriously, thank you for your time and attention this evening. This will be a brief, but I feel very beneficial presentation, not so much presentation, but just discussion for you guys to learn a little bit more about what the Cultural Diversity Committee has been working on. And so, as you know, we've been working diligently to come up with a plan on how we can help serve as a conduit to repairing race relations and building an inclusive community where all feel welcome. And you are keenly aware of the racial tension that's being felt across our nation. And there's just a heightened level of awareness and call for change. And I mentioned last week in the email that I sent to you all, this is just, it's at a level that I've not seen in my lifetime. And so as town leaders, you play a unique role in setting the tone of our local government and institutions. As mayors and council members, you can set an example and commit yourselves to prioritizing racial equity. And one of the ways you can do that is by participating in equity leadership trainings or starting a community conversation to engage voices throughout the town. So earlier this year, I did present on behalf of the Cultural Diversity Committee our 2020 strategic plan that gave an outline of the Cultural Diversity Committee's work and how we can partner to help the town serve as a leader of how towns and municipalities can work together to build inclusive communities and to have staff that have been educated on matters of diversity and inclusion. And so given the current racial climate in our country, we want to be intentional about how we move this forward. And so I officially invited you guys to participate alongside the Cultural Diversity Committee in a 21-day race equity challenge. And so with that, I want to introduce Marilyn G., who is our recently appointed vice chair to the Cultural Diversity Committee, just to go over the memo that you have in front of you regarding this proposal, looking for your approval and certainly for your participation, because it's always nice to know what it is that we're putting out there. It's going to allow us to, one, work together as with the committee and the commissioner and mayors together to have a better understanding of what we can do together, but also the needs of the town, and for you to experience this firsthand so that when you're asked about it, you can talk about what your personal experience was. And I certainly think Pastor Chuck, his words about this program were that it is transformative. And so I certainly invite those of you who are able to engage with us on this. And so Marilyn, if I could turn it over to you, if you've hung in there and you're still on.
I have, thank you. And good evening to the mayor and to the commissioners. Excuse me, it is a late night for me. But thank you for your time. And I will certainly be brief because, but as Natisha said, and I wanted to note, part of the approval earlier in the evening, even though it was a brief approval, was our two members that have been approved to the board. So thank you for that, to our committee. And they will be the two members that will also be able to start this 21-day challenge with us. So our intention as members of the Cultural Diversity Committee is to complete it ourselves first, so that we will have the experience, of course, inviting you as well, but so that we will have the experience as we go forward and offer it to the community in the form of, like Dr. Pastor Chuck has done this a couple of times the doctor in my head was Dr. Moore. This is the America and More Diversity Education Research and Consulting Program that's headed by Dr. Eddie Moore. And so it looks like an hour, well, since it's 21 days, the way it's been presented, or the way we would present it, as we would host 4 hour-and-a-half Zoom sessions once a week for 4 consecutive weeks on the same day for 21 days. And the way the challenge is laid out, you have to do one thing per day. Simply choose an article, a comic strip. We sent the information to you, and as Natisha had mentioned in the previous email, that's far more detailed. Excuse me. But we feel that it is so powerful, and we'd like to, as I said, do it ourselves and then offer it publicly, quarterly, or as needed by a demand as we go forward and promote it to the community. For the 21 days, as it's related to our goal as fostering a climate of mutual respect among the diverse communities in Matthews, to encourage discussions of differing viewpoints, to promote understanding a multicultural environment. It is exactly in alignment with our goals. I was trying to scroll up a bit, but I think I have a copy of it in front of me as well. In order to facilitate the town of Matthews taking a deeper dive into race, we must first, of course, understand our own ideas about race, injustice, and bias in the world, in our community. And so that's the nature of our intention for this recommended action of the 21-day racial equity habit building challenge.
Okay. Thank you, Marilyn and Natisha. Are there any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I don't have a question, but just a comment. I want to thank Natisha for bringing this. I've had opportunity to read over and talk to Pastor Chuck. It's my baby too. I'm down that line of equality and making Matthews one of the leading areas. I just believe that if we're going to make a difference, it's got to start with us. And talking about race is a hard issue, but it's an issue that's got to be taught. And the more you talk about it, the better you come to be relaxed and understanding that the differences of other people and backgrounds and where they come from. And so I commend this committee. I commend this committee because that was something that when 4.5 years ago that we wanted to bring to the town. It's been silent for a whole lot of years, and I know Hazen, you've been working on that, and that board has brought some good ideas, but every time a new board comes on, sometimes they either get passed by. But I think I'm real proud of this board and the makeup of this board and the dynamics and diversity of this board of commissioners and mayor. And I believe now is the time that if Matthew is going to make a difference, it's us. And I'm strongly believing that we got to make it better than it was when we got here. I say this: what would history say? And I'm always a part of a team that I want to be the very best. I want Matthews. I think I can say I am Matthews. Now I've been there 33 years in November, and I seen us come a long way, but we still got a long way to go. And I think this board that we are here tonight, I think we all see what is before us all over the country, all over the world. It's a time that none of us have ever seen. But me as a Black man and first commissioner of color, I see where we are, and I see where we're headed. I'm a little anxious sometimes because it seems like government is slow. I say this to Hazen and all of y'all many times. One of the worst things you tell to a Black man is wait. Man, we've been waiting 400 some years. So if we're gonna do something, I encourage all of my fellow commissioners and mayors, let's join in with this group and let's take the challenge. Let's see our own bias and all of us and prejudice and see what we can do to make Matthews lead the way to surrounding 6 outer towns and make sure we're the best. So thumbs up to this committee, and I plan on being with you on the 21 day and do the best I can to make a difference. Thank y'all so very much for listening.
Thank you. course, you know, we meet our the fourth Tuesday. So the 27th is our meeting. So when we get together with our new members and Hazen, and we're all together to hash it all out, then of course we'll roll forward from there. So thank you so much. I'm very, very excited and pleased.
What's the board's pleasure? Would it be appropriate to take a roll call vote to endorse this effort?
I have a question, if I can, please.
Of course.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Miller.
What is the time commitment? I think I read that it's one meeting a week via Zoom and some homework assignments and articles. What is the overall time commitment, please?
The overall time commitment is very nominal given the transformative nature of the program. So it looks like hosting, that's within the memo now. So 4 hour-and-a-half Zoom meetings, right? Once a week for 4 consecutive weeks. So that's why we know we meet on Tuesdays. And when we're having this planning conversation and thinking about including you, we know that you have many days and different things going on. So it would be something that could be consistent, and even if it needed to be flexible, but regardless, those sessions would be an hour-and-a-half. The first part being led by a facilitator to talk about whatever the particular item is on that. Once you go through the list, it's very laid out in a very structured but straightforward way. So in the sense that it's very comfortable with that conversation. Then we'd facilitate using Zoom breakout groups. So you have breakout groups and then have conversations. Like I said, this conversation is to share with you, which would invite you, but there's an abundance of resources. So once we have everyone's voice involved, it would be a lot clearer. But the structure, as you were saying, the specific time would be those 21 days, the hour-and-a-half, 4 hour-and-a-half Zoom meetings. First part being led by a facilitator and then breaking out into breakout groups for the rest of the time for those sessions. Is that clear?
If I could add to that, Commissioner Miller, within the body of the email that I sent out, where the 21 days comes into play, is there something that you're asked to do each day? It might be watch a short video, read an article. And so there's a little log that you check, whatever one of those things you did. And it's just to increase your knowledge and understanding around race and biases. And it's through music, video. It gives so many different opportunities or options for you to explore within that. So I encourage you, if you go back to that, you can kind of get an idea of what that content is. So that the 21 days, meaning you do something each day to gain knowledge around a particular subject, but the 1.5 hour sessions will be for 4 weeks, consistent on that one day. So nominal in the sense that hour-and-a-half block, certainly, and then otherwise it's when you have, 10 minutes in your day to go through and do one of those other items.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Bland.
What time of day is that? It's not dealing with that's after regular work hours, correct?
So I would ask Lori and Hazen to kind of let us know. I know you guys have standing commitments and we want to get a time that works best for everybody.
Yeah, it's hard to take off, tell the judge, Judge, I can't be there because I got to go somewhere else. That doesn't work.
Understandable. Oh, trust me, I wear many hats. I understand.
Okay.
Again, I would a motion to endorse this challenge.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor, that we endorse the Cultural Diversity Committee 21-day Racial Equality Challenge.
I'll second that.
Have a second. I heard it from Commissioner Bland first, so we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Bland?
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley? Mayor Pro Tem Garner?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
McCool?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
And I vote affirmative as well. So we look forward to see how we can transform, perhaps. So thank you, ladies. Appreciate you hanging on for so many hours.
No problem.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the mayor's report, item 14. I have a few items I want to bring up. As Chief Kinnenberg mentioned, we've had more and more people out and about, and in particular, there are appropriately perhaps socially distance folks at Seaboard and Cigar 105 and all of our businesses there. And I've received a number of texts and calls, etc. Not number, but a few more than I should, about people speeding, particularly over the new speed table we just built. One of the texts was from one of our former mayors. So Hazen's aware of this. We do need to speak to Chief Pennington about this, but for perhaps some more enforcement there. But I'd like the public to know to please slow down. We've got more people out now, and they're walking around, and there is a concern someone's going to get hit. Even though we've spent an incredible amount of money to improve that intersection, there's still people going quite fast. I've seen it when I come to town hall and I'm leaving. I see people just fly, probably going 40 miles an hour through downtown Matthews. So just want to encourage the public to slow down, be careful. We want to make sure nobody gets hurt at that intersection or anywhere in town, but particularly down there since it's so crowded. During our last meeting, I asked you guys to get in touch with me if you'd like to do a video regarding getting the vote out. And I thought we could combine it. I received an email today from a constituent asking about specifics about what, where mail-in ballots could be taken and which voting locations were open when. I have heard from a few of you. I recognize we need to do this very soon, like this week, if we're going to do a video because the election's upon us. So if you are interested, I have heard from a few of you. Let me know by tomorrow. And really, it's just going to be informative, where you go to vote, what the rules are for voting, and encourage people, regardless of their political affiliation, to go vote. So if you're interested in participating in that, please let me know.
For God's sake, make sure you give accurate information. That's the only thing I would caution you.
Oh yeah, we're going to get it. We're going to get it directly from the Board of Elections. So yeah, I'm not going to be making anything up. I do want to mention the Matthews CARE Act funding relief program that's gone in place. Grant program for small businesses and nonprofit organizations to reimburse for qualifying COVID-19 related expenses up to $10,000. This is Matthews' own grant program that we have, not the county one. Applications are still being accepted until October 26th. So I encourage folks that maybe applied for that opportunity to look at matthewsnc.gov/cares. It's matthewsnc.gov/cares. Those of you that know some folks that might qualify for those grants, please encourage them to take a look at that by October 26th. And finally, this Wednesday, not Thursday, as Becky reminded me, thankfully, the chamber meeting will feature yours truly giving a State of the Union address for the town of Matthews. That's at noon this Wednesday. So if you want to take a peek at that, it will be virtual. And we'll be talking about all the great things going on in Matthews. So that's all I have for the mayor's report. We'll go on to the attorney's report. Charlie?
No report, Mayor.
Town manager's report. Budget.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we're going to closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-316A5 to consider acquisition of real property. So we're going to take about a 5-minute break. There's a separate Zoom invite. I hope everybody has that. If you don't, please let Lori know so you can get it. But we'll see everyone in about 5 minutes.
Well, Mayor, you need to vote on that. Mayor, you need to vote on that, and you need to name the street address.
Okay, absolutely. The street address. We need a motion to go into closed session to consider acquisition of real property located at 3017 Matthews Mint Hill Road. Do I have such a motion?
So move.
Motion for Commissioner Miller.
Second.
Second for Commissioner Whitley. We'll call vote. Commissioner Bland.
Yes.
Commissioner Whitley. Mayor Pro Tem Garner.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
Commissioner Miller.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Unanimously. We'll see you in about 5 minutes or so. Thank you.
Thank you.